Can you describe a little bit about the Bulawayo Hebrew congregation? What did it look like?
Glorious to me. When it's the burning of the shul was a total tragedy. It's not completely burned down. It's a shell. There's a shell remaining, and it's used now. It doesn't have a roof. It's used now by a tabernacle community who meets there. So the spirituality is still somewhat there, but the shul was European in style. The shul, and across the road from the shul was what we called the Guild Hall, which was a kind of ramshackle one-story building. But when I see pictures of it now, but when I was there growing up, it was where we did our plays, and we had bar mitzvahs there, and wedding receptions, and there were classrooms there. So it was a very vibrant community. We had Hebrew teachers hired to teach us in the afternoon. Then, as the community developed and the need arose, we built a multi-story building, four stories, I think, next to the shul. And that was for the Jewish kindergarten. And the rooms above, I think, were for cheder, and then on two levels. And then on the top floor was for the Jewish youth movements. We were all very... if you wanted to have a social life in the Jewish scene, you belonged to a youth movement. And I belonged to Habonim, which for me was the best. But there was also Beitar and Bnei Akiva eventually. And that was, through that we learned Israeli dancing, we learned Israeli songs, we went to camps locally during our school holidays. There was a Jewish club, didn't mention that. There were two Jewish clubs, one in town and one out of town in the country. And at that country one, we had a camp, which was, talk about rough. I mean, nowadays you take a cot and you put your sleeping bag on the cot. We had tarpaulins that we put on the floor, on the ground, and put our sleeping bag on top of that. We pitched our tents ourselves and took them down ourselves. We dug the toilets ourselves. You know, it was wonderful fun. We had a lot of fun. And these camps not only served as a social gathering for Bulawayo Jewish kids, but also the other town, Salisbury. We would mix. They would come to us and we would go to them for other functions. And then in all the tiny little towns, there would be a smattering of a Jewish community here and there. Their kids would come. So there was strong affiliation from my perspective in Habonim. I know Beitar had the same. And there was rivalry, you know. You Beitar, that kind of, you're Habonim. So we were very much, we celebrated Yom HaAtzmaut, we celebrated Yom HaShoah. We were vibrant. And in some ways, I must say, the Jewish communities were ghettoized. We kind of lived close to each other, not on top of each other, but close to each other. My mother was very involved in the shul. My father was involved in the shul. My mother was involved in community work, Zionist work. She never went back to medical studies. She never went. The only studying that she did in Bulawayo was to learn English. and to do typing, shorthand and typing in those days. But she never worked. My father, and then I'll get back to the shul. Later on, again, as the community developed, there was a need for an old age home, and my mother and father were founders on the founding board and committee of this old age home. And in fact, it's that home now that has become the center of what's left of the community in Bulawayo. It's where they have their services, and if you want to be kosher, you do it through them, and it's kind of like the last vestige of a Jewish community in Rhodesia, in Zimbabwe, not just Bulawayo, in the whole country. And there are old people there.